June 10, 1793. A crucial turning point is taking place in the tumultuous history of the French Revolution. After a massive popular uprising that drove out the previously most influential group, the so-called Girondists, directly from the seats of the National Assembly, power is now in the hands of a group known as the Jacobins. It is the great paradox of history. The revolution has seemingly already achieved its goals. It has removed the king and established a republic. But only now is its bloodiest phase about to begin. And if paradoxes were not enough, the killing will be led by a man named Maximilien Robespierre, the leader of the Jacobins, who until recently rejected the death penalty in the name of humanist ideals, begins to send thousands of people to the guillotine without mercy. His real and imagined opponents, his former allies and friends. He unleashes a reign of terror that even he cannot survive. Robespierre was born in the year 1758 at Arras, about 200 kilometers north of Paris, and the times of his youth were more than difficult. He lost his parents at the age of 6. His mother had died in childbirth, and his father had taken to drink and left the family. Little Maximilien had to grow up with his grandparents. In addition, this was a period of increasingly insane economic and social conditions, when France was on the verge of bankruptcy and famine due to constant wars, disastrous crop failures, as well as a profligate royal court at Versailles. Robespierre is sensitive to this situation. Like his father before him, he becomes a lawyer in his native Arras and defends the poor in particular, which earns him considerable popularity. Then when he is appointed judge in Arras, he soon resigns because he refuses to pass death sentences. Like many other intellectuals of the time, he was struck by the new Enlightenment philosophy of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, which proclaimed the equality of all men and urged them to throw off the shackles of religion and noble oppression. That's exactly how France operates. The church and the nobility, traditionally called the First and Second Estates, refuse to pay even the smallest taxes, even during a famine, so it's no wonder that an explosion is on the horizon. King Louis XV attempts to calm the situation by convening the Estates General for the first time in 175 years. This assembly is a kind of advisory council made up of representatives of the clergy, the nobility, and the Third Estate, which consists of everyone else, the commoners. No one knows then that the Great French Revolution is just to begin. On the 1st of May 1789, the 30-year-old Maximilien Robespierre arrives in Versailles. He was elected representative of the Third Estate for the Arras region. At first, everyone will make fun of him. He is only 160 centimeters tall and therefore wears high heels, a petty bourgeois tailcoat and an old-fashioned powdered wig, and sometimes even wears a pair of glasses over his eyes because of his poor eyesight. He is not yet known but will soon prove a great orator and agitator and will always be at the center of surging events. The Third Estate demonstratively leaves the Estates General and forms its own assembly on an unused tennis court. This assembly takes the initiative and begins drafting a democratic constitution. In addition, because there is still hunger, a popular uprising breaks out, during which the Parisians take the royal prison of the Bastille by storm. Suddenly, the revolution is in full swing. Robespierre takes the floor in the assembly almost every day. For the record, it is he who, in one of the speeches, says out the famous words of the revolution: liberty, equality, fraternity. On August 5th, they enthusiastically vote to abolish feudalism in France, and on August 26th, they jointly sign the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. This groundbreaking document guarantees equality of citizens and the freedoms of speech and religion. Then in October, they agree to confiscate the church's property and pay off their state debts. King Louis fails to suppress the revolution. He even tries unsuccessfully to flee the country by driving a carriage in disguise towards the Belgian border. Just before they arrive, however, he is discovered and ignominiously returns to Paris with the flimsy excuse that he has been kidnapped. Now he has no choice but to sign all the documents that dramatically reduce his power, including a change in the constitution. This changes France from a country ruled only by the king to a constitutional monarchy, and keeps Louis XVI himself at the head of state, at least for the time being. The person of the king and his future role will then become a major point of contention among the revolutionaries. Robespierre joins a radical club of Jacobins who meet in the library of the former convent of St. James. There he meets other great figures of the revolution. The journalist Jean-Paul Marat, publisher of the revolutionary newspaper Friend of the People, or the thunderous and pugnacious lawyer Georgy Danton. The Jacobins have no mercy with the king. They cry out at the demonstrations, "He's a traitor, he should be overthrown." Eventually, a mob led by Danton raids the Tuileries Palace in Paris, where the king is staying, and Louis and his family are captured and thrown into prison. The monarchy ends, a republic is proclaimed, and it would seem that the revolution may be over. But as we now know, this is far from happening. Maximilien Robespierre is one of the most popular Frenchmen at the end of the year, after the declaration of the Republic in disgrace. People like the fact that, despite his fame, he still lives a simple life. He lives in a single room in the annex of the house of the carpenter Maurice Duplay, to whose daughter Eleonora he is said to be secretly engaged. This report, however, is not confirmed by historians, nor are any other juicy details of his personal life, because Maximilien Robespierre lives only for politics. But the trial of the imprisoned king seems to be the turning point in his life. Robespierre has always been against the death penalty, even rejecting wars, but the current situation changes his mind. France is under attack from neighboring states who want to put the king back on the throne, and uprisings have broken out in many places inside France in support of the king. Basically, chaos is raging everywhere. Robespierre then delivers a famous speech to the National Convention, as Parliament is now called, which ends with the words, "The king must die so that the nation may live." But the execution of Louis XVI, after a very close vote by the members of the convention, does not calm the situation. On the contrary, Robespierre, Marat and Danton decide to continue to fight their enemies, or else the revolution may fall. Violence is necessary to establish a new order where violence will no longer be necessary, Marat says, and Robespierre adds, "Freedom will only be achieved when the criminals lose their heads." They have not only monarchists, noblemen or church leaders on the music, but also moderate revolutionaries who abhor further violence. The first in line are the Girondins, who hold the majority in the convention and in fact govern the country. Some of them had voted against the king's execution. The Jacobins, led by Marat, call for a popular uprising that invades the convention and drives these Girondists from the benches directly under the guillotine. A week later, on the 10th of June, the Jacobins seize power in the country and the wildest phase of the revolution begins. Five weeks after the coup, while at home in his bathtub soothing a severe rash, Jean-Paul Marat is murdered, stabbed by Girondist Charlotte Corday. The retribution will be severe. The Jacobins control two key institutions in the country, the Revolutionary Tribunal, which tries the enemies, and the so-called Committee of Public Welfare, which runs the country. Robespierre is elected to head it and becomes the most powerful man in France at the age of 34. On the one hand, he wants to remove all the vestiges of the previous regime, so for example he bans slavery or makes the Jews equal, or abolishes the existing Christian calendar and replaces it with a revolutionary one, counting not from the birth of Christ but from the proclamation of the Republic, so that France finds itself in year one. On the other hand, it ruthlessly liquidates any opposition. At that time it will be called Jacobin terror, or simply terror, because it is terror that will become Robespierre's official policy. All those who do not actively praise the revolution are arrested, just sing an old song or wear inappropriate clothing. The guillotine is decapitating at an incredible rate. In less than a year of terror, 17,000 people will be executed and at least 10,000 more will die in prison. For example, a woman named Cécile Renaud is arrested and accused of trying to kill Robespierre. Without evidence, not only she but also her father, brother, aunt and 54 other alleged conspirators go under. Old friends led by Danton Robespierre say that too much is too much, but he, being devoid of sense, will stop at nothing. If even Danton isn't revolutionary enough, he must die too. Everything is topped up on June 8, 1794. On that day, Robespierre held what he called the Feast of the Supreme Being. He had Christianity replaced by a new state religion to symbolize reason, freedom, and democracy. But those present whisper that he's gone mad and it's not enough to have power. He wants to declare himself God. Hence Robespierre is completely exhausted. For the next few weeks at home he simmers and suffers in a stupor that others don't understand the necessity of his actions, paranoia that he'll be next, or moments of rare self-doubt that maybe even he isn't so perfect as to deserve to lead the revolution any further. After 40 days of absence, he returns to the convention. He has prepared an explosive speech about how he will look for the next enemies of the revolution directly among the deputies, or even members of the Committee of Public Welfare. The strategic mistake is that he doesn't name anyone. And if he doesn't name anyone, it means that theoretically everyone is at risk. There's nothing to wait for. The next day, when Robespierre returns to the convention, he is already facing a united opposition that won't even let him finish another speech and votes to arrest him and his closest friends. Since no prison will accept the country's leader, Robespierre and his closed ones manage to escape to the town hall. But there the inevitable awaits. At night, the convent troops storm the building, and in the ensuing confusion, Robespierre is severely wounded in the face. Either he was shot by one of the soldiers, or more likely he turned the gun on himself with the intention of committing suicide. But his hand was rammed and he only shot through his cheek and blew off his lower jaw. Severely wounded, he is then brought before the Revolutionary Tribunal, which delivers the expected sentence. The next day, Maximilien Robespierre stands before the same guillotine under which he himself had sent thousands of others. Due to his injury, he doesn't even have a chance to say anything. When the bandage holding his jaws together is removed, he lets out only a piercing groan, which is cut short by the fall of the sharp blade. It's over. The circle of revolution is closed. What began with the noblest of humanist ideals ended in a terror that eventually engulfed all the leaders of the great French Revolution, including the most radical.